Hello and welcome to another European Agenda program. We are here today with Simon Dubbins, United Union International Desk Officer, as well as Freedom for Ocalan Campaign co-chair. And Kariane Westrheim is joining us from the EUTCC via our Skype connection. Thanks for joining us, first of all.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. First of all, we would like to start with Simon Dubbins. The situation about Finland and Sweden is getting worse, as we see on the media as well, on the headlines. So shortly, we would like to hear your evaluation about what's happening right now with Finland and Sweden.
Well, Erem, we were absolutely appalled that the agreement has been made between Turkey, Finland and Sweden. What we really see is Finland and Sweden afraid of Russian aggression and afraid of an authoritarian dictator in Russia, but what they've done to seek protection, they've actually made an agreement with another authoritarian dictator, and effectively they've sold out the whole of the Kurdish people as part of that deal. And it really is quite disgusting, frankly, to witness what has happened, particularly from two countries that have a long history of protecting human rights and civil rights and workers' rights. They have a big international history and tradition of that, and they've demolished that tradition in one go, and they've effectively, in our view, virtually given a green light now to Erdogan to go ahead with more aggression, more violence, an invasion, an attack and ethnic cleansing, and that is quite really revolting to watch the two countries behave in that way.
Thank you. Dear Kariane, I would like to carry on with you. As you heard as well, Simon has underlined that Kurds has been sold out, basically, and Erdogan has been given a green light to carry on his genocidal policies on Kurds. So how would you going to evaluate the latest developments about Finland and Sweden?
I think, as Simon Dubbins says, we are shocked. I hardly can read about it now, because this is something I have never believed that by the NATO SG could have done something like this. And it's a complete betrayal. And the Kurds are now sacrificed, and it's in a way Lausanne all over again. And I'm also very shocked that Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, who is himself a social democrat, comes from a very social democrat family. His father, Thorvald Stoltenberg, was involved in the peace agreement in the Balkan War. And he, who knows much better than this, he knows the fact about the Kurdish suffering all over the years, and still he sacrifices Kurdish people over this kind of agreement. It's really shocking. I have no words to express this appeal right.
Thank you. Thank you. Dear Simon, another significant issue on the papers has been signed on this deal with Finland and Sweden, and we saw the pictures of Erdogan handshaking with the leaders as well. There is something that we need to highlight. The PYD, the PKK, and nearly other Kurdish movements as well, liberation movements, has been labeled as a terrorist organization, while still the case on European Court of Justice is on about delisting the PKK. Do you think these steps will affect the PKK situation, and how?
Well, it is highly likely to affect it, Erem, in a very negative way. We know from our painful history in Ireland, and we know from situations like Colombia, that we really do need both parties to come to a table and find a negotiated solution. And it's history shows us it's impossible to just seek military solutions in these situations. So it's going to exasperate it. But what is really troubling as well, in particular, is the way that Sweden and Finland have gone along with this definition of the PYD and YPG as terrorist entities. They've adopted Erdogan's perspective on it. Those of us that really do know the situation know that the YPG and the PYD political voice there played an absolutely critical role in defeating ISIS. We know, I've been myself with parliamentary delegations to Rojava, northeast Syria. They've actually built an inclusive democratic society which respects women's rights, minority rights, ethnic rights, and so on. So, as I said before, it really is quite disgusting to see Sweden and Turkey adopting Erdogan's definition of that. And if I may just pick up the point that Kariane made, when Jens Stoltenberg, the General Secretary of NATO, talks about the legitimate security interests of Turkey, it is quite incredible. What about the legitimate security interests of the Kurdish population and the civil population in those regions? So we know that Turkey has invaded Afrin and ethnically cleansed it. We know they did this exactly the same in the 2019 situation as well. And this move is really now caving in to his perspective on things. Now, the Belgian court ruled a number of years ago the PKK is not a terrorist organisation. It is part of an internal civil conflict. And I think that view was beginning to build and gain support. So really this is tantamount to trying to pull the rug away and pull the rug from under the feet of those who really do want both parties to engage and find a peaceful solution to the conflict. So it's extremely negative.
Exactly. Thank you for making a very important point, dear Kariane. I would like to carry on the same topic with you as well. Simon mentioned that the military solutions is not the way to sort out this issue, and also he also underlined the NATO General Secretary's approach as well to this. So we can clearly see that the NATO and EU has the ability to sort out the Kurdish issue and in Turkey as well. But do you think they have the willingness or not? Because on the action, on their practice, we can see they make the conflict a bit deeper rather than trying to reach it to the solutions. How would you going to comment on that?
Right. As I said before, I think both Stoltenberg and the political establishment in Sweden and Finland knows very well that the PKK and the Kurdish people are not terrorists. And they have the ability, they have the possibility to act as negotiators for a peace agreement between Turkey and the Kurds. But very short-sighted goals are chosen in order to just get Finland and Sweden on board. But in Sweden, they say that there is a before and after the 24th of February when Russia invaded Ukraine. And there is a before and after 28th of June when Sweden and Finland signed. signed this agreement with Turkey. So my only hope is that the Swedes and the social democrat veterans in Sweden are very upset at the moment. And there is a major protest against this agreement among the Swedes in general. So I hope this will continue, because very heavy social democrats, former foreign ministers, foreign inner ministers are now protesting and saying that, okay, the people that, the politician that we voted for has betrayed us. They have sold out Sweden to this regime. So I hope this protest campaigns will continue. That is a hope. But who knows? We have to see we have to see how this develops.
Thank you. Simon, to wrap up that topic, basically, what else needs to be done? How do you think the Kurdish community and the Kurdish movement should approach to these latest developments about Sweden and Finland as well?
Well, I think the Kurdish population and community has every right to feel very afraid of what has just happened, and also to feel angry and betrayed. As I said a moment ago, we know, the world knows, the service that the Kurds did in fighting ISIS on the ground and facing the horrors of that. And we know that they've built a better society there. We also know that Kurds face unbelievable discrimination and repression. I myself saw firsthand the violence that was going on in Sur district, in Cizre and Silopi in the past and so on, the attacks that are going on currently in southern Kurdistan. So they're right to feel angry and betrayed again. I think what is important is that they do not lose hope, that they carry on fighting and protesting, as Kariane said. I think there's a lot of disquiet as well in big parts of Swedish society, Finnish society, but more broadly and more generally. You know, Erem, we've been building the Freedom for Ocalan campaign, and we've got a very good base now in the trade union movement and a lot of support. We're attempting to build that more widely as well, and I think those forces, we really have to recognise the danger of this. If Erdogan does go ahead with an attack, and it's not a secret, he's been publicly announcing he intends to do that, we already have the war in Ukraine, a conflict which is geographically very wide in scope. If he launches an attack, not only is it a danger for all the Kurds that live there, it's like putting a sledgehammer into the Middle East, which is already extremely fragile and extremely dangerous, and we could end up in a much, much wider conflict. So all of us that believe in peace and justice and democracy and so on, we have to mobilise, we have to stop the forces that are beating the drum for more war and more conflict, and we have to recognise that the Kurdish struggle is absolutely fundamental to this. It may seem for a lot of people far away, but it is going to impact on them here in Western Europe and the wider world as well. So we need to stick together, we need to mobilise, and we need to fight and push back against this.
Simon, another significant issue is about Freedom for Öcalan, and you're running a biggest campaign in Europe with the UK trade unions. There is a big conversation in between MPs and MEPs that keeping Mr. Abdullah Öcalan under isolation and keeping the PKK still on the forbidden organizations list is kind of two different faces of the same problem, two different faces of the same coin. So how would you going to comment on that? These are two related issues. And still the PKK is on the terrorist organizations list, and still the isolation carries on. So what is your evaluation about that?
Well, look, the first thing is just purely on a humanitarian basis, the treatment of Abdullah Öcalan and the complete isolation, no access to lawyers, family or anything. There hasn't been any contact, I believe, for more than a year now, possibly 2, is completely unacceptable and it is wrong. So we have to address that and we have to bring pressure to bear. Erdogan is ignoring even the recommendations of the Council of Europe, the Committee for the Prevention of Torture, who are saying that this is unacceptable. So that has got to be dealt with. But look, the bigger problem is there is only one person that is capable of actually leading the discussions and the negotiations to bring about a resolution, and that's Abdullah Öcalan. And Erdogan and the Turkish state engaged with him between 2013 and 15 in an attempt to move in that direction, and then they abandoned it and returned to the path of war. What we are saying is, unless this person is at the table, then there can be no proper negotiated solution. So a first step is to give him the freedom back and actually engage with him properly. Regarding the listing of the PKK, as I mentioned before, a Belgian Supreme Court has already ruled that it's not a terrorist organisation. The all-parliamentary group in the UK has issued a report saying the listing in the UK should be reviewed, obviously with a view to addressing that. We have to stop this attitude which is simply labelling everybody as a criminal and as a terrorist, which is exactly what the Turkish state want, and actually look at the situation for what it really is. Understand the repression that Kurds have faced over decades, if not hundreds of years, and start addressing the root causes of the problem. I mentioned before, Erem, we only came to a peaceful settlement in Northern Ireland, on the island of Ireland, when finally the British government recognised they will not get a military victory and we need a negotiated solution. And that has proved, with all its ups and downs, it has proved to be very successful for 30 years in reducing the violence and helping people live together again. We've seen it in Colombia. With all the problems there, there was a negotiated solution to that conflict. If we want to stop the danger of this exploding in a much more destabilising way, which will affect all of Europe and the wider world, we have to take a stand and make sure that there is a negotiated solution, and that will only come about if there is access to Abdullah Öcalan and he is freed to play that role.
Thank you, Simon. Kariane, the isolation is still on, invasion attacks are still goes on, and the war crimes of Turkey is still on, and we can see on the latest operations of the invasion attacks as well, and usage of the chemical weapons as well. But still, the EU and its institutions are still keeping silence. There is no any reaction to Turkey's war crimes as well, and chemical weapons usage is very important issue. It's against the international agreements as well. So why do you think, very shortly, EU is keeping silence against Turkey's war crimes? Of course, we have seen on the actions on the NATO and the relations, we know why, but for our audience, we would like to hear it from you very shortly, please.
First, I would like to say that your analysis, Simon, about Abdullah Öcalan is really correct. There has to be a negotiated solution. But the problem is that these states and the European Union, the US, they all know what is going on. They know very well that there is a war going on, they use the chemical weapons. Still, they choose Turkey because it benefits their interests at the moment. So I think in this climate, it will be very difficult to initiate a peace negotiation or a peace agreement. But I think that the only hope now is that there are an increasing protest from politicians, from people, from all the people that support the Kurds, and the Kurds themselves has in every corner of the world, they have to stand up and say something to protest. And we, as Simon said, we support the Kurdish case. We know them for years. We know what they stand for. We know the political direction the Kurdish liberation movement have taken, and we support it. But I think we have to work harder. We have to write, and campaigns like the one that Simon leads is very useful. And even if it looks hopeless at the moment, we still have to just carry on, not give up hope, just protest and carry on as we in what we believe in. But it is very hard when Stoltenberg stands there and say, "Oh, poor Turkey, they have so many domestic problems." So where does he get his facts from? It's like he's listening to fake news. He don't want to listen to. He don't listen to the Kurdish people. He don't listen to their spokesperson, their politicians, because it doesn't benefit him now at the moment.
Simon, we mentioned about the war crimes and chemical weapon usage. There is APPG's report as well, and lately the OPCW didn't accept that report, but the journalist Steve Sweeney has sent on his name that report to make also a call to OPCW to go and make an investigation in the ground, basically. But still, we can see on the news, and these chemical weapons are still used. And we know that Britain has a big gun trade with Turkey. Especially after Brexit, Boris Johnson has approached to Erdogan as an open market. We can clearly see that. And also in our investigations, we have witnessed that some of the chemical weapons platforms and some of the control mechanisms of that bombs has been produced in Bristol as well. Why do you think Britain's approach to Kurds is in that situation? Because Britain is selling these arms, and Turkey is using these arms for genocide. To make a genocide on the Kurds, basically. So we can clearly say that Britain has Kurdish blood in their hand, and still this gun trade, this arm trade is still on, and it's growing. In 2018, we can see that there is 11 million pounds of arms trade between UK and Turkey. So what would you like to comment on that? Isn't that unfair?
Erem, I think, look, the UK sells weapons to all sorts of appalling regimes, so we shouldn't really be surprised at that. It's disgraceful and it's wrong and it should be stopped, but that they're doing it is not a surprise, particularly when you look at just how right-wing the UK government is. The whole situation at the moment, the war in Ukraine, conflicts, is a lovely distraction for Boris Johnson because of all the domestic problems we have. But it is wrong and it should be stopped. Why the Organisation for the Investigation of Chemical Weapons Attacks and so on refused to accept the report, I don't know. I don't know what justification they've given. But if you know anything about the regime of Erdogan and the way the Turkish state behaves, the level of violence and ethnic cleansing that it is prepared to engage in, then I think it's absolutely credible that Turkey has been using chemical weapons. They back jihadis. They have no problem with vast acts of ethnic cleansing, and they're prepared to bomb their own population. So we really should not be surprised, and they should absolutely investigate that. I don't know the exact figures, Erem, but I would have thought 11 million is probably an underestimation of how much arms trades is being done with Turkey, but it certainly is something that needs addressing, and in terms of the British population, we need to raise our voices and say this is wrong, it shouldn't be happening.
Thank you. Dear Kariane, we would like to hear your, lastly, your message, your evaluation about latest developments and situations. What would you like to tell to our audience via the Medya Haber screens?
I would say that the Kurdish liberation movement is a very strong movement. They have developed a very critical consciousness. They know what's happening. They will resist and continue to resist. And I really hope they will stand there, even if the situation is more horrible and damaging than ever. So they have to stand there. And I think what I said before, what we have to hope for is that there is a huge uprising or protest, a political protest all over the world now about what is happening. And I think that is something that we can do, because the agreement is signed. We can't do anything about it, but we can protest, and we can stand up, and we can write, and we can say what we think, and we can work even harder for a solution, as Simon has mentioned, because it has, at the end of the day, there has to be a negotiated peace agreement between the Kurds and Turkey. That's the only solution. When we reach that point, I don't know, but I will never give up that hope. And I think the Kurdish liberation movement is strong enough to go through this as well.
Thank you. Simon, the key name for bring peace to the Middle East is Öcalan. And the key way, the pathway that should be followed is, we can clearly see that is not the military operations, but the negotiation table. So what is your message? Lastly, what is your evaluation? What would you like to also add on that I didn't ask in this program? Lastly, we are wrapping up, so you have a couple of minutes.
Erem, I would say this. Obviously, I've mentioned the importance of the centrality of Mr. Öcalan's freedom in order to find a negotiated solution. But just picking up the comments that Kariane made about the Kurdish political movement not losing hope, I think it's really important to stress that. We know the Kurdish struggle has endured so many difficult points in its history, but it is strong. It is absolutely, determined not to be defeated and smashed into submission. And to try and end on a little bit of a note of hope, despite all the difficulties, there's a presidential election coming next year in Turkey.
That's very important.
And
as well.
Despite everything that Erdogan has done, he's jailed thousands and thousands of journalists, of trade unionists, of human rights people. He's on the verge of trying to ban the HDP because of the electoral threat it is to him. But despite all of that, it looks like he's got 40% or less and is probably not going to win. Now, we never know what Erdogan will do. It may be he cancels the election, it may be he does something else. But right now, that should tell all Kurds, even in the non-Kurdish part of the Turkish population, there is a huge amount of opposition to Erdogan. The country is in an economic crisis. Inflation is running at officially 70 or 80%, but it's actually much higher than that, we're hearing. There are all sorts of problems, so do not lose hope. It won't be a free and fair election, we know that, but it still looks like he's got problems. Focus on that. Make sure that Erdogan doesn't get re-elected or cannot get back to power. Stand firm in all parts of Kurdistan, and we will absolutely carry on trying to build the solidarity movement, keep the pressure on the Western powers, and particularly the United States as well, not to abandon the Kurds, not to allow another attack. And difficult as it is, we will carry on fighting, and the Kurds should never forget they've got more friends than just the mountains. There are a lot of people out there that will stand with them still.
United Union International Desk Director and Freedom for Ocalan Campaign Co-Chair Simon Dubbins, dear Kariane Westrheim, EUTCC Co-Chair, thanks for joining us in European Agenda program. Thanks for joining us, and thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting.
We have Simon Dubbins and Kariane Westrheim today in European Agenda program. We will see you on the next program.